Yo, what's good YouTube? This is the MCHOSE L7 Pro, and this is the MCHOSE L7 Ultra. So this review is just going to be an overview of what's good about them on paper, how it makes me perform better, and thirdly, my confusions and gripes with it. I do have a couple confusions and gripes between the Pro and the Ultra. While one would assume that the Ultra would just be better in every way, I actually think the Pro is better for higher performance. If you play aim trainers or grind ranked, this is going to be the one for you. If you're more of a casual player, the Ultra has a bigger battery, especially if you're playing more casual stuff where you can just leave it at 1k hertz. It'll last you like more than 2 weeks. The trade-off is 5 grams of weight, which is kind of strange, and that's what I'll get into. But first, let's just go over everything every gaming mouse review should do. So on your screen is a list of everything I think every mouse review should cover, at least as the baseline. So right into it, build. No creaking on either of these. They're just absolutely solid, and they don't use any holes, not even in the base. So I really appreciate that I'm getting no creaking at all whatsoever, which is really good because maybe 1 or 2 years ago, that's something you'd really expect from the budget mice, right? They would cover all the specs, but not the build. Next is coating. The coating is great. I really love this coating actually. In my opinion, it's up there with the best of the best. I have my GPX here too. And honestly, I think it's a little grippier. So really good with that. It's actually competing with like Logitech, Endgame Gear, Zowie with the best coatings, right? As for the button wobble, you can see there's no button wobble. It's made very, very well. And you can feel the mechanism inside that is preventing the wobble. So really good on them for having that attention to detail there. The base, like I said, it's solid and it has everything you need. This is your DPI button, obviously the sensor, and finally the switch for 2.4 gigahertz mode versus Bluetooth. MCHOSE has gone ahead and provided Bluetooth with every mouse I've tried from them, which is a bit confusing for me. I understand who needs it, like people who want to use their mouse on their gaming setup and then also maybe take it to school or work. But me personally, I would be more curious as to the weight differences. So I don't know how Bluetooth is implemented, but I'm wondering maybe taking out some parts, you could get these even lighter without having Bluetooth that, you know, most of the consumer base, in my opinion, isn't going to really be using. And finally, for the build, we are going to look at the weights of these. So basically exactly 40 here on the Pro with the dots. As for the Ultra, basically exactly 45 there. So good on the listings, but you're probably going to be up a gram if you use the full size skates. Also note that I'm using 6 dots here and 4 dots here on the Ultra. So, you know, might be a discrepancy, but not very much, obviously. So yeah, in my list as far as build, we're checking all the boxes here. Next up is the buttons, and I have no issues to report really. The Omron opticals here feel really good, and they are notably lighter than a GPX Superlight. A lot of people think these Omron opticals are a bit too stiff, and a lighter alternative would be something like the Maya X. And I think I like these the best of those three because it's lighter like the Maya X, but it does give you tactile feedback that I felt was missing at times with the Maya X. The scroll wheel is a TTC gold dustproof encoder. Really nice for them to have that encoder here. In my opinion, it's the most reliable one. If you saw my Death Adder V3 video, I did go ahead and swap this faulty encoder that was not dustproof and thus had issues because of dust with a TTC gold dustproof encoder. No issues here. It is just a bit more tactile than maybe other more silent scroll wheels are, but I'll take the reliability any day over the sound of it, you know, as long as it's not too loud like something like a Zowie scroll wheel. As for the side buttons, they're not the sharpest like Razer side buttons, but they definitely get the job done and don't have that mushy pre-travel on something like the GPX, so great on that here. I can do a short sound clip for those who are curious. And I did forget to mention that the middle click on the scroll wheel feels really good as well. Feels like an actual switch and not a cheaper dot switch that some companies go for. Finally, the skates. As you might have seen, I've already replaced my skates. I'll show you what they look like because I didn't throw them away for this purpose. So yeah, they are just black dyed PTFE skates. Kind of reminds me of the OP1. So I did go ahead and remove those because I'm not the biggest fan of stock skates anymore. I am reformed. And yeah, I just like how the base just gives you a lot of space to put dots, and you could put dots pretty much anywhere. They do have these little lips that I hate because they scratch your pad, but they're so low profile that it doesn't actually do much scratching, though that might happen if you use a softer X-Soft pad. I'm using a mid pad, so it doesn't bother me at all. If you're curious, I am using Ultra Glide skates. These are the Racing Sport 2, though on the Pro I am using the Speed variant. Finally, the software, let's just go ahead and kick it over to the PC. If you remember in my A7 Ultra video, there was a software, but now you can see that they have their beta WebDriver live. Go ahead and see my L7 Pro here. I'll show you all my settings. You can see here, this is the key remapping, which I don't touch. The DPI, I usually use just one stage of 1600. And the power settings, I'm using 5 minutes to hibernate. I usually use 1K in most games, but in aim trainers like Kovacs, I will use 4K. The key debounce time, go ahead and set this to 0. You don't have anything to worry about because these are Omron opticals. Also, if you check out Zoggle or P-Zoggle, channel. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but he makes the tech power up reviews, which are very detailed in terms of latency. And you will see that the Pro, even though it's using the 3395, has little to no latency, and the click latency is insane. It's competing with wired mice. Wired 8K mice, that is. I'm sure you recognize these: OP1 8K, XM2 8K, Death Adder V3 8K. In wireless operation with 0 ms debounce, it's at 0.2, whereas those wired ones are at 0.1, which is quite insane. LOD, I'm going ahead and using just one. All these controls basically suck, except for maybe motion sync. According to the tech power up review, motion sync in wireless mode is going to add about 0.5 ms, so I don't really use it. My PC gets adequate performance in most games, so I don't really feel the need to use motion sync. Here's where it gets kind of weird. So by default, it's going to have game safe mode enabled, and you want to go ahead and turn this off, obviously. This is going to make it low power mode, and turning it off and turning on esports mode is going to improve the performance just a bit. According to the tech power up review, this is going to get rid of any off timing on the polling, so just go ahead and turn this on. Finally, for others, you can go ahead and update all the firmware. I did that here. Unfortunately, the firmware does have to download as a separate file. So, you know, if you're afraid of Chinese software, then tough luck. Now onto the Ultra. It's basically all the same. The only difference I have is that the LOD, I tried 0.7 and I don't really feel a difference. So it's not something you need to specifically buy the Ultra for, because obviously the Ultra has the 3950 that allows the 0.7 LOD, whereas the Pro has the 3395. Again, turn off that game safe mode and turn on esports mode, so you just get the best performance, most consistent performance as well. And finally, for the extras that I'll get into here, the only thing it does come with extra in the box is just a set of grips, which I appreciate, but I would have preferred extra skates, especially having those black dye PTFE skates that most people aren't gonna like. But I will still give the extras a green rating because it comes with this, which is the high polling dongle. At $55 and $65 respectively, the Pro and the Ultra didn't really need to include this dongle. They could have charged, you know, an extra $10 to $15 for it. So I really appreciate them being really competitive with the pricing and even throwing in the high polling dongle in there. The next part of the review will be how it helped me perform, and like I said, this is an X2 style shape. So very low button height and then a back hump, but despite being a pretty small mouse, it does preserve the width, which I really enjoy, especially as someone with larger hands. I'm about 21 by 11 centimeters. The low button height just helps you a lot with precision. I'm enjoying that aspect a lot more on this mouse as opposed to a GPX2. The Kovacs footage you'll see has a lot of scenarios that require a lot of precision. For example, PGT, I think the first spot is the most precise one, being the smallest and having a lot of vertical movement, and having this low button height just helps me micro adjust for it. I think especially it's when the target reaches the top and you need to catch up to it. So if I'm failing to track the ascent, you can kind of just prepare yourself, get to the top, and then use your fingertips to kind of finally track it and make sure you don't lose out on all that score. On Snake Track, there's something similar where the target gets really far, but it starts to move very slowly, which is where you need to get a lot of your score as well. Because just like the first spot in PGT, Snake Track will go very fast when it's not at the farthest. So again, if you're missing score when it's moving fast and harder to track, you still need to dial in or at least be close to when the target gets the furthest away and starts to move very slowly. Again, like I said, the low button height is really nice to track those parts just because you can just use your fingers lightly to track those areas and pick up your score. Finally, on ground, this is less precise, but the 40-gram weight is really nice to play reactive on just because you're going back and forth, trying to speed lock it, going left, speed lock it, going right. And while my speed locking could use some work here still, I'm definitely able to get a lot more runs on a 40-gram mouse than a 60-gram mouse just due to fatigue alone. Also for ground, the third bot is meant to throw you off a little bit. It does change up the pace from the first two bots, which are faster than it. So having that low button height just gives you the precision you need on the third bot to not get thrown off too much. So yeah, I don't think I really need to go into too much detail other than that, just because it's a common shape that's been out for a while and it feels very nice at 40 grams. What I will get into next is my confusions of the Pro versus the Ultra. So the only differences here is that the Ultra has a 3950 sensor and the Pro has a 3395. The Pro also has a 250 milliamp hour battery, whereas the Ultra has a 500 milliamp hour battery, and that causes the 5-gram weight differential between the two, which is why I like the Pro more than the Ultra. Because the Pro's 3395 implementation is already so good like we saw in the tech power up review, the 5-gram weight difference is just better to pick here. If you're more of a casual player that plays a lot of single player games and then when you play FPS games you don't bother to turn up your polling rate up to above 1k hertz, you can just go ahead and get the Ultra. The battery lasts so long here that I just recommend this for more casual players. But if you play a lot of Kovacs and you play a lot of FPS games, then you're going to want the Pro here. That 40-gram weight is just so much better, and it really bothers me that there is not a 3950 QC version that has the 250 mAh battery, because that would obviously be better than both of these here. I think MCHOSE moving forward should just ditch the 500 mAh batteries. I think that should be sold separately for maybe $5 to $10 for those who really want it. Because if you look at another mouse they make, like the M7, this is supposed to be a Zowie U2 clone. The MCHOSE M7 doesn't cut the weight of the Zowie U2. However, that's just for the M7 Pro and the M7 Ultra. They actually make a base M7 which features the 300 mAh cell, and that weighs 53 grams. A hypothetical M7 Ultra with the 3950 and the 300 mAh battery and 53 gram weight from the standard M7 is a much more enticing Zowie U2 clone than the standard M7 Ultra as it is. So my point here is basically saying MCHOSE is not making the best mice they could possibly make. They need to take the sensor from the Ultra lineup and take the smaller batteries from the Pro and the standard lineups to make the best possible performer, in my opinion. That's why I'm sticking with the Pro at 40 grams. It just feels amazing. And honestly, the biggest competition that the MCHOSE L7 Pro has is the Pulsar Crazy Light X2, which is going to be a very similar shape but at 35 grams rather than the 40 grams here. And while I do recommend decreasing the weight, as I said here with the Ultra to the Pro, it's kind of a harder argument when the MCHOSE L7 Pro is $55 and the Crazy Light X2 is going to be $120. So yeah, between those two, you can make your decision. I'm choosing the L7 Pro, obviously. I would just much rather have this at 55 than have the Pulsar at 120, especially considering these have really good clicks and Pulsar struggled with their click design, and not to mention the Pulsar QC. But yeah, that's basically it for the review. Peace.